Brian Cunningham here with KAPOL and Contact Mission. It's pretty safe to say that most people in the world have heard something about Jesus of Nazareth. You know that he preached to the masses, healed the sick, cast out demons from those possessed, claimed to be the Messiah, claimed to be the Son of God, died on a Roman cross outside of Jerusalem around 2,000 years ago, and was reported to have been seen alive on multiple and diverse occasions by his closest followers. But have you ever heard that he had siblings? One of his brothers was named James, and interestingly enough, he's mentioned not only within the New Testament, but also outside of the New Testament. When it comes to James, the brother of Jesus, he may have had one of the most unique conversion experiences of all. First, we have evidence from the New Testament that demonstrates that James was not originally a believer. James was a skeptic of his brother Jesus when it came to his ministry and messianic claims. In Mark chapter 3, verse 21, we find where Jesus is home. And Mark says that his own people, his family, was trying to prevent him from preaching by saying that Jesus was, quote, out of his mind. Now imagine not only thinking your brother is crazy, but being so put off, perhaps even embarrassed by your own brother, that you have to confront him to his face about the possibility of being a lunatic. John tells us explicitly that the brothers did not believe in him, but we also see something else very telling. John tells us in John 7:3 that Jesus' brothers told him to go to Judea to show his works. On the surface, this would seem to be a good thing. But if we back up to verse 1, we read where the Jewish leadership from Judea were plotting to kill Jesus. This is not what we would consider to be the definition of brotherly love. In fact, we might call it sibling rivalry. In addition, what's really interesting is that it very well could have been James who was leading the charge of the brothers against Jesus. Imagine the possibility of your brother, your own flesh and blood, plotting against you. Such a rivalry had to have hurt Jesus deeply. However, we read in the book of Acts where James becomes the leader of the Jerusalem church just a few years later. And he is so respected that we read where Peter and Paul both take heed in listening to what he has to say. So it appears that James could have been a natural-born leader. But what must have happened to account for this transformation in James? I mean, he already rejected his brother, who found his fate in crucifixion on a Roman cross. A form of death as despicable and embarrassing to the family name as possible during that time. So what happened? How do we best account for the transformation of Jesus' brother James from skeptic to a leader in the ancient church? After James became a Christian, we also read in the book of Acts and in the book of James that James strongly held to his Jewish roots. If this is the case, then how much more of a conservative Jew would James have been before his conversion? In other words, whatever happened to change James's mind regarding his brother Jesus had to have been something extraordinary, something bigger than Jesus' mere teaching ability. It had to have been something more groundbreaking and earth-shattering to get him to align with this new movement which rallied around his brother. Finally, around the mid-60s of the first century, the ancient Jewish historian Josephus tells us in Book 20, Chapter 9 of his work, Antiquities of the Jews, that the Sanhedrin assembled and condemned James as a lawbreaker, and afterwards had him stoned to death. What else, other than an appearance by the risen Jesus, could explain James's dramatic turnaround from mocker to martyr? I believe that when we take the testimony of the New Testament authors at their word, we find that the most obvious explanation in the case of James is, as in most all cases, that the resurrection of his brother finally convinced him that what his brother had been claiming all along was the truth. Jesus of Nazareth was Israel's Messiah and the Son of God. I'm Brian Cunningham with KAPOL and Contact Mission. May the story of James's conversion from skeptic to leader of the ancient church and martyr serve as but one more piece of evidence in your cumulative case for Jesus' bodily resurrection from the dead.